For everybody out there, this is Ulf Muller. Ulf Muller is the founder of an organisation called myfm, or maybe you could explain it a bit better than me, Ulf. It's your baby, you tell me.
Well, that's interesting, yeah. Well, I think it has borne out of the rise of interim management getting involved in facility services in the last 20 years. I do remember in early days it was had quite a negative connotation being interim. It was like you don't get a job, that's why you do interim. But the times have changed, and we have much more people who see their career in interim management and consulting on one hand, and more organization being able and open to expand their capacity and their competency in certain areas, and open to take these resources on. And it's quite a flexible model or flexible way of thinking of how you can strengthen your teams and make things happen on the short term. So I think that's a real trend in the last 20 years happened. And now with COVID even more so, because I guess the flexibility of working from home, you just taking that a step further and saying, why would I want to work only for one organization? This becomes very, it questions the fundamentals of employment and how you create work and organize work.
Interesting. And that leads me nicely into my first question around emotional intelligence. So, what strategies would you say that an individual can leverage to enhance their emotional intelligence in both a personal and a professional setting?
I guess if you challenge me to bring it down to one thing, I think maybe we're lacking our ability to engage with others. We're lacking generally an ability to engage with others because we are not interested in them. And because we are seriously not interested in them, we are more interested in ourselves. Our intent is not to really want to understand what other people are about and who they are and what they do. And therefore we are not open to their positioning and their emotions. We are hidden behind our drive to be listened to instead of to listen. If I bring that, maybe that's my take on that. Because I think every time I have an agenda, I don't really open to other people that much. I employ tactics and strategies and to look like I'm listening, but I'm not seriously listening. Yeah? And it's not a technique for me. I guess it's just an intent. If I really want to know what others are about, what they can bring to the table, I don't have an agenda. And I think that's maybe for me the one point in terms of emotional intelligence. We're all emotionally intelligent to a degree. We're all aware how we feel and how other people feel. But I think it gets drowned out by our own intent to talk. And maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe it's our Western society where we are more valued on how we promote ourselves instead of connecting with other people.
Interesting. Like an Americanism, like a high five all the time, because, there are people in the public eye. I'm not going to say show business, but there are definitely people in the public eye who have made a lot of money out of portraying that they have an emotional intelligence, but the reality of them is really that they're only there to serve themselves and for other people to serve them 9 times out of 10 by giving them money in a monetary way.
Exactly. And that's surrounded by tools and strategies of how to increase your emotional intelligence. But I think if you would take it all down to the one thing, maybe if that person would seriously be interested in what other people have to say and how they feel, and not just have to say intellectually, but also how they feel, what world they are living in, then maybe if we have that interest, we might be able to listen to each other more and just evolve the intelligence. Because if you're open to things, that someone is maybe angry or upset or frustrated with you, and if you would be even more interesting to find out why they are frustrated with you, you might evolve your emotional intelligence even further.
Yeah. That's interesting. When I first started out in recruitment many thousands of millions of years ago, and I used to be interviewing people to join my team, I would say to them, what makes you think that you're good at this job? And they would say, oh, I'm really a people person. I'm really good at talking to people. And I'd be like, well, I'm not interested then. And they would be like, well, why? Surely that is what this role is. This role is about talking to people. And I was like, no, it's not about talking. It's about listening to people and joining up the dots. Listening and joining up the dots. It's not about talking. We can all talk. Everybody can talk. But are you listening, and have you heard what they've said?
Well, I do.
Okay.
Well, we do communicate with babies, and they do talk not many words often, and we still have a way of communicating.
And dogs.
And dogs. Yeah. And I think also, what I found fascinating is, we have a human history. We've got millions of years without words, and then we got words for a few hundreds of thousands of years. No, I don't quite sure. And then we have intelligence maybe being valued for the last 2,000, 3,000 years. Kind of surely we have more skills in our emotional connections with each other than we have evolutionary, than we have from our academic and more thinking-based engagement. I guess the trick for me is that we don't value it. It's not valued. It's more valued to talk than to listen.
How would you say that emotional intelligence can influence relationships, including communication, conflict resolution, and collaboration?
Well, I see lots of conflicts in the placement of people in my world. And I do have two sides of my engagement. I got a client organization who wants to sell the role and their organization to a customer, and they just talk. They give me a job description, they talk about the role, and then I got a candidate who gives me a CV, and they only talk about themselves. And actually, most of the engagements, they don't really listen to each other. So could they create better matches? Could they step away from each other if they feel it's not right? And could resolve some conflicts because that maybe the individual doesn't deliver what the organization requires to deliver? Could they resolve their conflicts if they are more emotionally engaged? For sure. And if they can articulate their feelings, and it's acceptable in a corporate world to say, I'm feeling really angry with you right now because, or very frustrated because you tell me 5 times to do something I can't do. I'm sure. I think in my world, I would aim to get people to think about how they feel about things, not in a kind of counseling kind of sense, but much more in a, does that feel right to you? Is it something that works for you? And how can you, if conflicts arises, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. It's just life.
That kind of like recruitment mediator kind of thing. So the client would say, didn't like the candidate. The candidate would say, hated the client. I was not selling the dream. The dream was completely different to what you had told me, etc. So then you would step in as a sort of a recruiter mediator to ensure that that conflict between the client and the candidate was moving forward for a better result. It may not be the result that they are completely matched, but that they would move forward in a result where they both weren't feeling negative towards the other one.
I think that's very well put, yes. And I think the result that is good enough to move on is not a win-win, is not the aim to always be perfect. The world isn't. And do you want to carry on working with someone you don't like? And not liking someone is okay. It's not, we're not all getting on with each other. That's fine. We're all living in tribes and groups and have our interests, and it might be political, it might be sociological, it might be psychological, We all have our makeups, and that's fine. That's okay. But just making a match that is good enough and productive, and if it's a really good one, then that's even better. But I do think that is much more fundamental. I think it's much more fundamental an issue around not having the intent really to listen. So my customer tells my candidate or my associate that they are not performing. They're telling them what their expectations are. And then I got the candidate or the interim to tell my client why they couldn't perform. No one says, can you just explain to me where you are with this? Why is this happening? How do you feel about it? Well, I don't want to tell, it's not working. People talk to each other, they don't listen to each other.